So the Rambam sees top of the page there, the heading is the omission of Shehecheyanu. Why we don't say Shehecheyanu on the last days of Pesach. Let's read the Rambam, and because we're going to analyze the Rambam and come to a beautiful understanding, a very deep understanding. Says the Rambam, we can read the English. On every night of Yom Tov and on the night of Yom Kippur, we say the brocho Shehecheyanu. What Shehecheyanu? Shehecheyanu is we're thanking God, Shehecheyanu, that He gives us life, Vikimono, and sustains us, Vigiyono, and we've reached this time. So every Yom Tov that comes around from time to, we don't say it about something that's always present. So that's the whole point of it. It's manazeh, this unique time. So every night of Yom Tov, so the woman makes the bracha when she lights candles, and the guy says when he makes kiddush. And in Kippur, of course, there's no kiddush, so we say it in Ma'ariv. The women don't, because they said it when they lit the Yom Kippur candles. So that's every Yom Tov, including Yom Kippur. On Shvi Shal Pesach, continues the Rambam, we do not say Shehecheyanu because it is not an independent Yom Tov. Okay? What he's saying here is, in these words, in contrast to, what do you think he's contrasting this to? The obvious parallel is Shmini Atzeres. It's also, Sukkot is a 7-day Yom Tov. When it comes to Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah, we do say Shehecheyanu. But we don't on Shvi Shal Pesach. So he tells us why. Because Shmini Atzeres is in fact a separate Yom Tov. It's not the Yom Tov of Sukkot, although it comes after it. It has different sacrifices and different, when the temple stood, and different laws. But that's not true of the 7th day of Pesach. The 7th day of Pesach is not an independent Yom Tov. Why is it a Yom Tov altogether? Because the 7th day of Pesach is the completion of the Exodus. It's the day the Jews crossed the Red Sea. That's why you don't make Shehecheyanu. Clear? Then he adds, and one has already said the bracha at the beginning of Pesach. That's why you don't say it on the last days. Okay, so don't read further because you're going to be very confused. You've got to listen to me now. The question is, why does the Rambam have to give the second reason? He's already explained why we don't make Shehecheyanu. Because it's not an independent Yom Tov. Stop right there. You don't have to add. And besides, you've also said the bracha at the beginning. It's very clear why you don't make Shehecheyanu. I just explained it. Why we don't make it on Shvi Shal Pesach, because it's not another Yom Tov. It's not like Shmini Atzeres. Okay, that's the simple question. Everything is precise. You didn't have to add that final sentence in the bold that you see there. The reader understands perfectly what to do. You don't make Shehecheyanu, and why you don't make Shehecheyanu. All is good in the world. What's he adding? So to understand this, you have to use now a little bit of your yeshiva brain, because that's what we're going to do now. The question is, there's two ways to understand. It's not in the paper, it's independent. Two ways to understand. We'll get back to the Dik and the Rambam. Two ways to understand why we make Shehecheyanu. It's two schools of thought. One is because of the novelty. Chidush. The Yom Tov comes around, it's something novel and new, a change. We're going to be conducting ourselves differently. We're celebrating an event that we're marking that comes around now that wasn't there yesterday and won't be tomorrow. It's new. Just like the simple reason you make a Shehecheyanu on a new fruit. Why are you making Shehecheyanu on the new fruit? Because of the novelty. A new fruit means something, a seasonal fruit that isn't around any other time. Which, by the way, nowadays fruits are available in the stores year round. So it's a big question. Can you make a Shehecheyanu on your fruit? It's available. It's a question to you. Is it novel to you? You walk into the store, you see it year round. It's a separate discussion. It's not so simple. So that's one school of thought. That the Shehecheyanu on the Yom Tov is just like the Shehecheyanu on a new fruit. It's the same principle. It's something novel. Second school of thought says, no, that's not why you say Shehecheyanu. You know why you say Shehecheyanu? Because of the holiness, because it's Yom Tov. Hashem has given us a holy day. Thank you for this holy day or holy days. Yom Kippur, it's 1 day. Rosh Hashanah, it's 2 days. Sukkot and Pesach, it's 7 days. Not the novelty, but the moyed, the fact that it's a Yom Tov that came around. You hear the difference? Now, what's the practical difference? So first I'll give you the difference. It's a practical difference. Say Shehecheyanu, say Shehecheyanu. What's the difference? If it's because of the novelty, it's because it's the Yom Tov. The practical difference is in halacha like this. Number one, what happens if a person did not say Shehecheyanu the first night? Now, the halacha is, well, you say it anytime the rest of Yom Tov. The question is this. Are you making up for it? Is it tashlumin? I use the Hebrew terms, or that's the time of the chiyuv. You hear the difference. If it's because of the novelty, and the first night came along, and you forgot or didn't say Shehecheyanu, the novelty is now over. We cannot recreate the novelty. Boom, it's gone. So now you're making Shehecheyanu, you're making up. We allow you to make up your lack. You didn't make Shehecheyanu the first time, but you're not fulfilling the mitzvah the way you should have, which is said at the first night when the novelty, the first day arrived. So when we say make up tashlumim, means it's a compensation. You're compensating, but you're not fulfilling your obligation. You lost it. For something like a new fruit. If a person ate a new fruit and forgot to say Shehecheyanu, can you make Shehecheyanu later? You can't. Because if the whole thing is a novelty, you enjoyed it already, the novelty. It's too late. You can't recreate the novelty. When it comes to Yom Tov, we allow compensation because the Yom Tov is still extending. It's like you're still eating the fruit. But the novelty part is off. We're clear? Or do we say no? Do we say the obligation is on Yom Tov? Is it still Yom Tov? You didn't say the first night. Say the second night, say the third night, say the fourth night, and you are discharging your obligation because your obligation is not the novelty component, it's the Yom Tov component. Is it Yom Tov now? It's Yom Tov. Is it the newness? It's irrelevant, the newness. It's the holiness of the time. The holiness is still present. So you make Shehecheyanu not as making up, but as a chiyuv. Clear? Now you really need your yeshiva thinking caps. You don't have a practical difference so far. Because practically speaking, if you don't say Shehecheyanu, you do say the rest of Yom Tov. We're just saying, is it compensation, tashlumin, or you're makayim the chiyuv, you're actually fulfilling your obligation. Either way, you still got to say it. So what's a practical difference? Okay, follow this. What happens if the first night you didn't? You didn't. Then the rest of Yom Tov, through circumstances beyond his control, he can't. He can't, lost his voice. Can't speak. Whatever we can think of circumstances where he simply can't make the brocha. Did he transgress or did he not transgress? If we say that it's the novelty, so look what happens. The novelty is only that first night. That first night, you could have said it, you didn't. Now you could make up for it the rest of Pesach, but you were prevented. Sorry, it doesn't remove the strike against you. You got the first night. You had a compensation possibility, but you couldn't use the compensation clause, so you're left with the obligation. So make it very clear. The first night you didn't say it, transgression. You can fix that for the next 6 days. You didn't, True, you're an einus and you're prevented, but it doesn't help to remove the transgression. You follow? But if we hold that that the obligation to say Shehecheyanu is the whole Yom Tov, did he transgress the first night? When does he transgress? Only is it the last second before sunset at the end of Yom Tov? If then you still can say Shehecheyanu, boom, you're out. But till then, he never incurred the obligation because the obligation is the entire Yom Tov. So in that view, if he didn't the first night because he just didn't bother, and the rest of Yom Tov he wanted but couldn't, he didn't incur any obligation because at the time of any transgression, at the time when the obligation was on him, he was an einus. And it's only at the end. Because this whole period, the obligation is still. So he had the obligation and he couldn't. So you're not liable. So that's a practical difference in terms of the punishment. Did he incur liability or not? If he did not say it the first night and the rest of Yom Tov, he was unable to. If we say it's because of the novelty, he incurred liability. If we say Shehecheyanu is not because of the novelty, which is only that first night, but Shehecheyanu extends equally over all the 7 days of Yom Tov, he doesn't incur liability unless he deliberately did not say it that last second before Yom Tov is out. That's when you incur liability. But we're saying, giving a scenario now where for 7 days he couldn't do it. Okay, so that's a practical difference. Now we'll understand why the Rambam, going back to the Rambam, we're asking, why does the Rambam, give a look over there, give 2 reasons why he don't say Shehecheyanu? He says, She'ein deregel b'fnei atzmai, and then he adds, just say the first reason. It's a good enough reason. Shvisha Pesach is not an independent Yom Tov, and that's why you don't say Shehecheyanu. Why does he add, and he already made a bracha on the first night? Because if he wouldn't add, he wants to tell us, the Rambam, that which view is he saying is the view? It's the view that says that not the novelty, that you say Shehecheyanu because it's Yom Tov. And that's why he adds, and you don't make a bracha Shvisha Pesach because you made a bracha earlier, implying, and if you didn't make the bracha earlier, if you didn't kvar bidach, then do make the bracha. And make the bracha because now it's an obligation. He wants to stress that making the bracha, if you didn't say it the first night, is not tashlumin, not compensation. It is actually the obligation. And he makes it very clear by adding that second line. And one has already said the bracha at the beginning of Pesach, clearly conveying to us that if you didn't say the bracha at the beginning of Pesach, you should say it now, just like you would be saying it at the beginning of Pesach. Like then it's the obligation, it's an obligation for the whole Yom Tov as well. So the Rambam, by adding this reason, is making us understand which position he takes. What is the halakhic position for saying Shehecheyanu? Not the novelty, but what? Because it's Yom Tov. And the only reason you don't make Shehecheyanu Shvisha Pesach is because why? You made the bracha the first days, otherwise you should make the bracha anytime on Pesach. Clear? By adding those words, he's telling us it's the second view, not the first view. So far, so good. Now a very subtle question. Wait a second. So it comes out according to the Rambam, the obligation to say Shehecheyanu is every day equally. The best time to do is at the first time, obviously. You do a mitzvah at the first opportunity, but the obligation is, it's like putting on tefillin in the morning. The best time is in the morning, but the obligation is on you fully and completely till sunset. All right? So you're saying the obligation to say Shehecheyanu according to the Rambam, as we're explaining it now, is till the 7th day. So it's kind of a little question here is, he starts off saying, you don't say on Shvisha Pesach, he should really say, you don't say Shehecheyanu any days of Pesach, because they're all equally liable. They're all equally liable. Why did you say Shehecheyanu on the 2nd day, 3rd day, 4th, 5th day, when the obligation is on every day? Because day 1 covers the whole Yom Tov. Now, if you didn't, do you remember on day 2? Say it on day 2. If you didn't, say it on day 3. You have all the way to Shvisha Pesach. But why single out? You don't make a bracha on Shvisha Pesach, and really he's telling us you don't make a bracha on really any day of Pesach, even though there's a reason to, because the obligation is to say, because you're yoitze with the first bracha. It's not such a big question, but we're going to go a little bit deeper into the whole story. And that is, the Rambam is preempting a question. I might say to the Rambam like this, okay, it's not an independent Yom Tov, but wait a second. There's a reason why I would think that on Shvisha Pesach you should say Shehecheyanu, even though it's not an independent Yom Tov. The middle days, I have no reason to say it. You said it on day one, okay. But Shvisha Pesach, the parting of the Red Sea, that doesn't justify making Shehecheyanu. And let's look at the parting of the Red Sea. There's two things to it. Number one, it's the completion of Yetzias Mitzrayim. What happened? And the people saw Vayar Yisrael es Mitzrayim meisas vasayom lenisha behem ad echad. The people saw the Egyptians dead by the seashore, not even one remained. Now they felt secure. So it's not a new Yom Tov, but it completes Pesach. The people were still afraid. When were they secure? When did they feel free? When did they physically actually earn their freedom, earn it or get it? It's on Shvisha Pesach. Okay, it's not another holiday. Shmini Atzeres is another holiday. It's not Sukkot. Most people don't even sit in the Sukkot Shmini Atzeres. And if you do, you don't make a bracha. Okay. But Shvisha Pesach is still part of the theme of the Exodus. But surely, since it adds this component of completing it, why shouldn't you say Shehecheyanu? And especially point number two, Shvisha Pesach is a foretaste of the final redemption. What's going to be then? I will utterly remove the spirit of impurity from the earth. That's similar to the complete destruction of the Egyptians. Shouldn't that lend the last day enough of a holiness, of a chidush to warrant Shehecheyanu? Turn the page. More than that, what do we say on? What did the Jews say on Shvisha Pesach? They said the Shira. They said the song to say every day, and there we have a reference to the final Beis Hamikdash. Mikdash Adnai Koinenu Yodecha, and the next pasuk Hashem Yilech Leilam Vod, in translation, you will establish the Mikdash of Hashem when your kingdom will be established on earth. So in the song that they're singing, then they're making a reference then already to what? To the third Beis Hamikdash. So adding even more reason for Shehecheyanu, something special, holy about this time. Moreover, next quote, there's a reference to Tchias HaMeisim, the revival of the dead. How does the whole song begin? Oz Yashir Moishe, then Moishe will sing. He sang. Why use the future? From here we derive an allusion to the revival of the dead, the Torah itself, which the Gemara says and Rashi brings. And finally, the Haftorah, the last day of Pesach, includes a detailed description of Mashiach and the redemption. And a branch will come forth from the stem of Yishai, and the whole beautiful description of the Haftorah. The wolf will lie down with the lamb, and the peace in the world, the whole world is full of the knowledge of God. So all these reasons would lead us to say that we should say Shehecheyanu. And finally, about the final redemption, there's two things we see. On the one hand, the pasuk says, I will show you wonders incomparable to the days that took you out of Egypt. On the one hand, it's completely, the miracles that are going to be then, now, are going to make the wonders that happened with Yetzias Mitzrayim look ordinary. At the same time, final quote, Yetzias Mitzrayim opened the channel to the final redemption. Therefore, we are obligated to mention the Exodus even after Mashiach's arrival. As we all said in the Haggadah, the Seder night, we have to mention Yetzias Mitzrayim even then. So it's making our question stronger. So Pesach has already in it, and Yetzias Mitzrayim has already in it, the final redemption. When do we see it overtly? In the last days. Shouldn't this be reason enough to say Shehecheyanu? And that's why the Rambam has to single out, you don't say Shehecheyanu even on Shvisha Pesach. Even though you got a reason to argue that it's not like the middle days where it's just adding a whole new dimension to Pesach. It's completing the redemption. It's a foretaste of the final redemption. So the question is, Taka, why not? So the answer, my dear friends, is it's similar to an answer to the question, why don't we make Shehecheyanu on Sfiras HaOmer? Sfiras HaOmer is a mitzvah comes around only at a certain period. So why don't we say Shehecheyanu? So one of the answers is, because one answer, by the way, is you can't say Shehecheyanu because we don't know if we're going to complete the mitzvah or not. So you may miss a day, so you're not going to make the full brocha. But another answer is this: it's actually painful. We're thanking God for having this occasion. Why are we counting? We're counting the Omer. It all begins with the bringing of the Omer offering on the second day of Pesach. The Torah says from that day, the time they brought the barley offering, you count 49 days. There's no barley offering, there's no Beis HaMikdash. So how can you say Shehecheyanu when there is this element of pain? Which is, by the way, why Ashkenazim did not say Shehecheyanu by a bris. Sfardim do. Because the baby's in pain. Taka, fantastic. But the baby's crying. You can't say Shehecheyanu, the baby's crying. Similar idea. Same answer over here. We're going to say, yeah, that on this day we get a foretaste of redemption. On the contrary, that causes a certain pain. That's a certain pain. Mashiach didn't come yet. The potential, the channel, but there's still suffering in the world. So on the one hand, that's why, and Shehecheyanu has to understand, Shehecheyanu v'kimoneg ben lizman hazeh, when you say the word zeh in Torah, it means it's point to the finger. This is it. Uncompromised. Redemption, Mashiach, not yet. The seeds, it's the process, it's going to come. But the point with the finger and celebrate, on the contrary, there's pain and suffering in the world. So that's why on the one hand, the Rambam has to say, has to single out, not even Shvi'ah Shel Pesach, because you would argue, but wait a minute, it completes Yetzias Mitzrayim, it's a final redemption. Yes, I hear what you're saying, still not. Why? Because Shehecheyanu can only be said when something is revealed before us, and therefore on Achon Shel Pesach, the great joy is tinged with a longing and an admasai. On the contrary, because we're talking about Mashiach, no, admasai gewalt, when is it going to happen? Even the admasai is even stronger on Shvi'ah Shel Pesach than any other time. Dafka, because we feel Mashiach's presence so powerfully, and therefore that's the reason we will not say Shehecheyanu. Okay, so clear. The conclusion is the two ways to understand why you say Shehecheyanu on the Yom Tov. Is it the novelty, or is it because of the Yom Tov? We see from the Rambam's added words, it's not the novelty, it's the Yom Tov, and therefore it's actually obligatory on the entire Yom Tov, and you're not making up for it if you don't say at the beginning. It's like putting tefillin later on in the day. You should have put it earlier. Okay, but you put it up now. You did the mitzvah tefillin 100%. If you say Shehecheyanu any time on Pesach, it's 100%. And the practical difference was, again, if you first night you didn't, and then you were prevented, did you transgress or not? According to Rambam, you didn't. According to others who say it's because of the novelty, you lost the compensation, but you incurred liability that first night when you didn't say it. That's the halachic part, and then we went into the light of Chassidus as well. All right, friends, have a wonderful day. And a good Shabbos.